We've got football broadcaster Juan Arango. He's live for us in Miami. Ugandan sports broadcaster Usher Komugisha is in Kampala. Africa could have up to 10 countries at the tournament if DR Congo come through their playoff. And in the UK, Chris Skudder, who's reported on every World Cup since 1994, which was the last time the event was in the US. Let's bring in Juan in Miami first of all. Juan, the world has been watching that draw. What stood out for you, and how will the co-hosts be feeling after what's just unfolded in Washington?
Very favorable. If you look at the outlook for Mexico, for Canada, and for the United States as well. Locally, I would probably have a different or even a more exciting view about it, because for a team like Colombia playing in South Florida would be extremely fair. Actually, for them playing in Houston, they could basically have 3 matches where they're basically the home team. Even the match against Portugal, they would be outnumbering almost 25-1 in South Florida against a team like Portugal. So that would be very key to see how that match ends up playing out. Brazil also in a favorable situation. They play in especially up in the Northeast, a very pro-Brazil side, especially Boston, which has one of the biggest Brazilian populations outside of Brazil. Same thing with Haiti in that part of the country as well. So there's some interesting groups that have really emerged out of this, and those are just a smattering of some.
Thank you, Juan. Let's bring in Usher from Kampala. Morocco, of course, the team from Africa at the 2022 World Cup, becoming the first African semi-finalists. They've been drawn with Brazil, Haiti and Scotland. How will Morocco be feeling, and how has their team evolved since the tournament in Qatar 3 years ago?
Well, I think going into the World Cup in Qatar in 2022, no one really expected them to go that far. Well, apart from myself, but them obviously being able to, come out of a group that had Belgium, Croatia. They went on to, knock out Portugal. They played, against the biggest teams in the world, and then obviously fell to France in that semi-final. But they really have shown that they can belong to the world stage, and they're going to try and approach this World Cup in a manner that is that of confidence, because they will be hosting the next World Cup after that in 2030, co-host obviously with Portugal and Spain. So their approach, the way that they've been building across the board, whether it is men's football or futsal or women's football, has been that of, we deserve to be on the world's grandest stage. They have, the facilities, they have the resources to match the big boys in world football. So I think that this is going to be different. In 1998, they played against Brazil. Of course, you remember the Brazil team of 1998 was quite the Galacticos, if you may call it that. They lost that one 3-0, but this one is going to be a bit different. You're coming up against, a team that, yes, is very well oiled, but you have to understand some of the storylines there. Achraf Hakimi was born in Madrid. So, coming up against a coach in Carlo Ancelotti, who's of course a legend in Madrid, there's going to be a bit of eco conversation. Not really you are underdogs, or because, yes, you're world record winners, that you come into this tie as favorites. So it's going to be quite interesting there for the Atlas Lions of Morocco.
So many storylines coming out of this World Cup draw. Let's cross over to Chris Skudder in the United Kingdom, home, of course, to the English Premier League, arguably the biggest global cultural phenomenon we have. But the England national team, little more than a footnote, really, in World Cup history, with the exception of 1966. But is this team under Thomas Tuchel going to change that, Chris?
Probably not, Andy. But, they've got a favourable draw, I'd say. Croatia, Panama and Ghana. And let us not forget, we've talked about this draw. There is so little jeopardy at the group stage. 48 teams. Only 16 get knocked out. So in other words, 8 of the 12 groups, the third place team goes through. So I don't think there are going to be many of the big names going out at that stage. And it really gets going, doesn't it, when the extra knockout, the 2 knockout stages before the quarterfinals. Just looking at the draw. So England really should make the last 4. And of course, the seeding now, as we've been hearing for the last couple of hours, Spain, Argentina, France, England, all, if they win their groups, cannot play each other till the semi-finals. I wonder about France. They've got a tough little group because they got Norway in there, Senegal, French-speaking country. Anything could happen really. And France have lost opening games before, or Senegal have done damage in the past. So of those four, I would say France possibly the least or the most likely not to win the group. And then, of course, it would really throw the cat among the pigeons. One other notable thing, and it's probably worth mentioning, Italy, we haven't talked about Italy, but if they can get themselves together, of course, that didn't qualify for the last two World Cups, and it's almost unthinkable, isn't it, that they should not make this one. But they've got to play Wales potentially, or Bosnia in the playoffs in March. But if they can get through that, their group, Canada, Switzerland, Qatar, you really wouldn't bet against them getting into the next round. And then, they could do some damage. So very interesting. Spain in with Uruguay, interesting game as well at the first stage. Portugal, Colombia. So, maybe the teams we expect to win the groups won't do that. World Cups have a habit of throwing up surprise results. And, of course, when we all look ahead and think, oh, well, they'll play them and they'll play them. And one result throws that out and the whole thing goes out of the window. So watch this space.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, talking of surprise results, we think back to Qatar 2022 and what happened to Argentina in their opening game against Saudi Arabia. They, of course, went on to win the World Cup. Let's cross over now to Daniel Schweimler, who's in Buenos Aires for us. Daniel, how will Argentina be feeling about this draw? They've got Algeria, Austria and Jordan. And how are people feeling about the country's hopes as defending champions?
I think they'll be quietly confident. I mean, no easy games, but nobody in that group that Argentina is going to be quaking in their shoes over. As you mentioned, that defeat 4 years ago, or three years ago now against Saudi Arabia in the opening game, that won't be forgotten. They have the same manager in Lionel Scaloni. It's a more experienced team, a more aged team. I think the biggest worry here is it's an aging squad. They're the biggest tournament ever. There will be more games. A lot will rest on how Scaloni plays his aging players, including Lionel Messi, who will turn 39 during the tournament. So that would be the big worry. I say an interesting group, but nobody there I think Argentina will be greatly fearing.
Daniel, I mean, Messi will be 39 at the World Cup. He's not absolutely said he's going to play, but what is the feeling in Argentina and how important is he still to that team?
Well, hugely important. As you can see, this mural behind me, just one of the many around Buenos Aires, around Argentina, with Lionel Messi lifting that World Cup in 2022. So a huge amount of hope and expectation on him. People here watch very closely what he's doing at Inter Miami in the United States. They're well aware of the fact it's a good league, the United States, but nowhere near as challenging as when he was playing in the Spanish league for Barcelona. So people are aware of that. Yet at the same time, they say he's got a great footballing brain. He plays, he paces himself very well in his games. They want him in that team. He's a talisman for the Argentina team. So they're hoping that Lionel Scaloni, the manager, will play him carefully, play him where it's necessary, and may have to rest him on occasion, perhaps in those opening group stages. But I think the whole nation really hoping that Lionel Messi will lead their team into action starting next June the 11th.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Let's bring back in Juan Arango, who's live for us in Miami. Juan, tell us who are the teams perhaps that we might not be looking at and who are the players that we might not be thinking out beyond the obvious Ronaldo and Messi. Who should we be looking out for next year?
It was funny because Daniel was just mentioning Messi and his playing time. Well, who's going to be filling in the gaps whenever he's not there? And maybe one of the players that you have to start looking at is one that's going to be taking the baton, if you will. And maybe it's looking at a player like Nico Paz, looking at what he's able to do and what he's been able to do over at Como in Serie A so far this year. I mean, another player to be looking at for Brazil is not, well, the big question is Neymar going to play? And I say, you know what? If he does, great. If he doesn't, that's fine too, because Esteban over at Chelsea has been tearing it up. That's another young player to be looking at. I mean, we mentioned Messi and Ronaldo. Who can forget about Lamine Yamal as well? How is he going to be coming off after a bit of a slow start this season in Barcelona? How is he going to be during the summer? That's the big question mark for him as well. So right off the bat, those three names are the ones that come to mind, at least from my perspective, from my vantage point, as far as this World Cup is concerned. Moises Caicedo is another one that I will be looking forward to seeing in the World Cup, much more mature now, one of the leaders in that midfield for Chelsea. How is he going to be able to be that engine in the middle for Ecuador as well?
Thank you, Juan. Let's bring Usher Komugisha back in from Kampala. Just looking at that draw, Cape Verde, one of the great stories of this World Cup draw, playing in their first ever tournament. Just quickly, how will they be feeling? They've got Spain, Uruguay and Saudi Arabia coming up in that World Cup.
Well, that's a very tough draw for Cabo Verde, but obviously that's expected to happen considering that they were in pot 4. But looking at the challenge ahead, that's going to be an interesting one. But so many people don't really want to, think about the details of where these players come from. These are players that, some of them have grown up in Portugal, so they really have a good attitude, kind of like what Morocco had in that 2022 edition in Qatar. I think that Cabo Verde deserve to be on the world stage. There will not be minnows going into those games. Of course, the big boys will come with all the pedigree that they've had over the years, but I think that Cabo Verde are a team that can try and cause an upset in that group.
Let's give the final word to Chris Skudder, who's in the UK for us. Is a European team going to be able to win this World Cup? You were there in '94. It's a very hot World Cup. Quickly, is it going to be a European winner, do you think, in 2026?
I think Spain are going to take all the beating. They're a team. England's problem is that they've had the players, but never that kind of team. And Spain just seem to get the job done. But, it's a World Cup. You just do not know what will happen. I don't think France will win their group. And I think Spain to go all the way, with England close.
Chris Skudder, joining us live in the United Kingdom, talking about the chances of a European team winning the World Cup. We will see. 2026 is a few months away. There are still 6 teams to be decided for those places at the World Cup. 4 places from European playoffs. There'll be 2 teams coming in from an interconfederation playoff. Could be the DR Congo from Africa, could be Iraq, playing at their first World Cup since 1986. Mexico, Canada and the United States are the co-hosts. The defending champions are Argentina. They're drawn with Algeria, Austria and Jordan. A reminder that the exact format of the games and the order of the games and the venues for the games, that will be decided in the next 24 hours while FIFA works out how best to organise everything and give the fans and the players a chance of getting from one game to the next. 104 matches will take place in June and July of next year. The final on July the 19th in New Jersey. Our global coverage is just getting started.
Don't miss out to get the full picture. Subscribe to Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.